So I'm going to talk in the brief time that I've got about cancel culture, but specifically the left's quite strange relationship with it, which I think is pretty revealing, because I'm just about old enough to remember when being on the left meant agitating against people losing their jobs. But today, in this era of cancel culture, the precise opposite often seems to be the case. It seems that many left-wingers' kind of primary response to someone or something that they find offensive is demanding that that person who uttered it be sacked and made an example of. And the point I want to make today is that these alleged leftists who are so fond of cancel culture are a threat primarily to the freedom of speech of ordinary people, rather than the celebrities they often pose and rage against. They don't see it that way, of course. They claim that cancel culture is a myth, that this is just rich, prominent people, as I say, who are complaining about being criticised when they say that they've been cancelled. So when a letter raising the alarm about cancel culture was published in Harper's Magazine earlier this year, signed by various liberal luminaries, one Guardian writer said this was just a bunch of influential people unaccustomed to being questioned, which was kind of funny because one of the signatories was Salman Rushdie. So unless you think that the fatwa was a strongly worded letter or a devastating Twitter thread, that argument doesn't really hold much water, but there we go. This was the kinds of criticisms we were seeing. There was a similar article by commentator Owen Jones. He made the point that after this Harper's letter, this is again just people very prominent in public life who are being criticised for what they've been said. And here I think he was struggling, as many of these people tend to, with the distinction between being criticised and being faced by demands that they be sacked, which was a little bit odd in his case, given he spends a lot of his time doing the latter and demanding people be sacked nowadays. Indeed, just a couple of days before that letter came out, he was running around trying to get someone from Oxford University to resign for saying something rude on Twitter about one of his friends. I think that the central argument that a lot of people missed in that letter, which I think is very important, is the idea that those most affected by cancel culture are often the ones you don't see. So they're not the J.K. Rowlings of this world. They're not people so rich that they can say whatever they want. They're people further down the pecking order. One example I think we saw this year was a Scottish author, Gillian Phillip. She was sacked by a publisher merely for expressing support for J.K. Rowling when Rowling was getting attacked and painted as a bigot for expressing some pretty mild gender critical views. And I think cancel culture is even more keenly felt much further down the income scale. There was this case a year or so ago where Brian Leach, a grandfather who worked in an Asda in Yorkshire, lost his job because he shared a Billy Connolly routine on his Facebook page, which someone took offence to for its mockery of Islam and religion. So my point is that every time we allow cancel culture to claim a high-profile scalp or to carry on, we legitimise the treatment of people who are less able to fight back and who are less likely to have their story told if they are quote-unquote cancelled. Though luckily in Leach's case, the press eventually found out about him and the outrage from the public led his employers to reconsider. I think there was one interesting moment amid all the rows over cancel culture, particularly in the summer, where the left-wing songwriter and activist Billy Bragg, he made this very telling admission. Someone raised to him the case of Gillian Phillip, that Scottish author who lost her publisher. And he said, and I quote, "I believe that employers have a right to act in such circumstances." So what cancel culture enthusiasts on the left are effectively campaigning for, as Bragg inadvertently admitted there, is the right to sack someone for daring to express their opinions. That's fundamentally what this is. And so in doing so, they're agitating not for workers' rights, but for bosses' rights. And I think that kind of irony escapes them, shows them how distant many of them are from the public these days. It's almost like they've become so deeply disappointed with ordinary people that they've kind of resigned themselves to just policing their opinions and doing with compulsion and censure and shaming what they can't do with reason and argument. And so whilst they might rage against the rich and the famous, the allegedly outrageous, it's my view that this illiberal leftism, these cancel culture enthusiasts, are a threat precisely to the ordinary people who they might once have claimed to represent.